It's always a bit of a strenuous process moving my stuff from my computer onto my regular computer, onto our streaming laptop. And for some reason today, I just decided to restart and crash. So, first 10 minutes there was just me trying to get the computer to turn on at all. Never mind all the stuff that followed. So, as I said before, I started this little Bonnie before our con in January. But I ran out of this purple. It's this particular shade of Toucan Purple. You can't really see it on here. It's actually a lot less violet. It's actually a lot more reddish, purple. It's a really pretty purple, but it's perfect for Bonnie and FNAF. But for some reason, I've bought purple from every other chenille yarn company I know of, and not a single one of them have a color that is the same as this one. I have another darker purple that's more in the violet area I use for my withered Bonnies. That color I can find things that are close to it. That's not that difficult. For some reason, trying to find a color that matches this purple has been impossible. So, finally got some. It finally went on. It actually just happened to go on sale. So finally got some. Ordered it, and it did just come in 2 days ago. So finally can go and finish this little Bonnie that's been sitting here for the longest time, just because I hate having unfinished projects sitting around. That's why before I've been starting any new projects, I've been trying to work through ones that I have sitting around. That's actually why there hasn't been a lot of crocheting on stream, because oh, by the way, this is Cozy Gamers. We're going to crochet and chat today. I forgot to do introductions. I really hope the mic is picking up. Yeah. It would not be uncommon for me to be talking to the audience and then there's no response. And if there's no one in chat, I don't know that my mic's actually picking up noise or not, because I can't see it from where I'm sitting. There was someone the other day who was like, "Hey, Cozy Gamers, can you chat with me?" And I'm in the chat, I'm fortunately I cannot, because my computer sits 3 feet away from me. So I don't have the typical streamer setup of 2 monitors next to you. Obviously, you would be able to see it if you could, but I can't easily access either of my controls. In order to do that, I have to literally get up. So I generally try not to do that once I've sat down. Where's the end of this? This is the fun part, is always trying to find out where the end is. Okay, that goes there. But, there it is. But, so I hope that my mic's working right now. Join me for the ambiance and the I'm gonna crochet a little, chat a little. A few things I can mindlessly mention about. Still working over a cold, so I'm a little fatigued, and I don't know how long I'll do this, because it's gonna... Okay, it's working. Good. I came on last time, and I was on a really good roll, and then someone's like, "The mic's not working." I'm like, of course, it's just like me to go chat for 20 minutes and I don't know, because no one was in there to tell me the mic wasn't working. That happens. I did actually go and check all the settings this time, though, before I started, because last 2 times the mic has not been on. So, yeah, that's been great. Did check it this time. For some reason, when I switch over between my computers, it knows where the mic is, because the settings will say the same, but for some reason it just can't find it. For some reason, I have to go tell it where it is, and then it's oh, now we remember all your settings. I'm oh, thank you. Wish you would do that the first time instead of me having to help you along, but anyway. So, yeah. I have been holding up to my name, at least, because the last 2 streams have been game-related. Because, this is supposed to be the Cozy Gaming channel. It's funny, when we originally came up with the name Cozy Gamers, we weren't thinking about cozy gaming, like the genre that usually put things like farming simulators and those sort of games in, like the coffee shop games and stuff like that. We never actually were thinking about the genre of cozy gaming. We were actually just thinking about oh, our whole thing is we want minimal effort setup, which we clearly didn't achieve. But we want to be sitting here in our sweatshirts surrounded by an obscene amount of pillows and plushies. What does that immediately bring to mind? Being cozy. So, it was, I think the other ones we were going for were lazy gamers and something else of that nature that, but like we couldn't get the name to. So the name I could actually, like, there was like, we had like 2 other names that we had in mind. I don't remember where they were. I wrote them down somewhere. But like Cozy Gamers was the one that I could actually get as a username. So that's what we got. And it works well enough. Because like, things like Gamer Girls are obviously taking. Cozy Gamer, singular, is actually already taken. So we're gamers because it was originally me and my sister. But Malian's been pretty busy. So she only rarely guest stars on stream. Which is fine. The hope is that once we get out of the school year, she's a preschool teacher and she has a very I wouldn't say demanding class, but just it's a lot when you do actually genuinely care about your job and want to make the best for these kids. It means you come home tired a lot of the time. I only childcare 3 days a week and it's tiring enough for me. But such it is to care for the younger generation. So anyway, I got this purple, going to finish this Bonnie, at the very least finish his body. I will see about getting his ears and his face on there. But it'll be nice to get him done and add one more to the pile for, we have our Ibashi or Bashu? I think it's Ibashi Con. Later on in February. I believe it's the second to last week in February. Pretty sure. So we'll be doing that. It's more of an anime-based convention, so I'm not sure this FNAF... I don't know if my FNAFs will sell as well, but they do tend to sell at every convention we've gone to so far. So clearly, it's something that has an audience, which, to be fair, is because, like, when you usually see crochet animals, you're usually seeing the same, like, everyone has a manta ray, everyone has a octopus, or a jellyfish, or a cow, or, like, the little cats, everyone has the little cats. So I think the fact that I'm, like, not only, like, I think I put a lot of detail work into my things I make. But also just, like, you're not going to find another booth that's giving you a little Freddy Fazbear, Yeah. Well, I love cute things. That's the reason I got into cute things, actually. That's the whole reason I got into crochet. If you can see behind my head right here, this was my biggest one. I bought this. I didn't make this. I hope to make something that big one day, but, like, for a while, and I have, like, over here, we have a Waffle Buddy. We bought it at market once. And there's a couple other in my room. Like, I, for a while, was in just a kick of, like, buying crochet things because I just love the look of it. I love the texture of it. I like the cuteness of it, obviously, the softness of it, soft yarn. Because everyone thinks yarn when you think scratchy yarn. And I'm like, no, I am all about the sensory. Like, I love it when people come to me. We've had 1 or 2 people come in at shows and be like, I love how soft this is because I have big sensory issues. Or like one time I got a commission that he's like, yeah, the boy, he's autistic and he has like really big sensory issues. And my sister, who is like, she's my spokesman who goes and gets me these jobs and these commissions. And she's like, don't worry, we already got that covered. Because I have sensory issues, at least in terms of textures. And so like, I would not work with this if I couldn't feel it, if I couldn't stand feeling it on my fingers. I have some yarns downstairs that were like from an old stock of stuff my mom has. I'll probably never use because I don't like their textures. So even 4-weight yarn, which is like the thinner stuff, which I use generally when I'm making potion bottle bags for like, D&D and stuff. I just don't care for using that yarn as much. It's one, thinner yarn is a little harder to work with, but also just I like softer things. So all the things I make are very sensory aware because I am. So I would not make something that I could not stand to touch myself for an extended period of time because that's usually how long it takes to make it. Is that gonna be enough? That's probably enough for now. So, but that's the thing I think I have a little bit of a unique market on, and the thing that why things like sell at our cons is that like, if there's like 10 crochet booths, you're probably going to see a lot of the same sort of things at every booth. Like again, those basic animals and stuff like that, and they are cute and easy to get. And that is something that I don't sell things that are like you can buy this for $10, unfortunately, because I considered that, but I realized I'm like, the stuff I'm making, I don't want to pump out the same tiny little bee 10 times and to give somebody, something smaller to get. Or like, a lot of people do the mushroom poppets. I want to make those at some point because I have someone who likes mushrooms in my group, but like, I don't do those sort of things because I find it boring. So I am doing essentially the same pattern over and over again when I make my Freddies, but I make a different color scheme each time, and then people are like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a Shadow Freddy before. So then they feel like, and that's what the thing I can sell is as. I'm like, I've made this once. You have it, you'll own it. You might have the only one because I might never make that again. My one I still have in my bag is my Jack O'Bonnie, which is a Halloween variant of Bonnie. That one took forever to make, so I probably will never make it again. So whoever has it will probably have the only one in existence because I might never make it again. As opposed to, you go to a market, you're like, oh, I bought this cute pink and white cow, that's adorable. And then I go and see the seller at a different market and like, oh, there's that same cow that I bought. She made another one, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, there's nothing wrong if you're someone who fills orders in that way. But I'm like, because I do that too, If someone's like, I want to get this withered Bonnie, I'm like, okay, I'll make another withered Bonnie. But where did I put my phone? But it'll be stuff like that though. Like, you can't go to another booth and find the same thing now, because yeah. So you got my message. I can never remember who I sent to my I'm gonna read your voice message in a minute, by the way. I just haven't yet, but like some people also like a lot of people do Snorlaxes. A lot of people have Snorlaxes. I've seen a lot of like the basics Kanto starters, so Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charmander, because those are a lot. And the thing is that I'm not saying anything against those patterns. Just I know those are free patterns. That's why everyone does them, because you don't have to pay in order to get them. I kind of go through a hoarding phase on Etsy where I go and find a bunch of cute patterns on Etsy and they're all conveniently on sale and they're only like $3 a piece. I can make that so many times. I mean, when you think about how many I spent maybe probably $15 on the 4 Freddies I have here, Freddy patterns I have that I've been using. I've made that money back plenty times by all the different variants and stuff I sell at markets. Because you can have the pattern and anything you make is free for you to sell because you made it, and also because like the things I'm making don't quite look like the pattern. Which row did I leave off on? I'm glad I wrote this down because I did not intend 11. Okay, got it. Row 11. Okay. 14. So like I'll just go in like it's something that again I still have, I think, things to learn. Obviously there's still things I struggle with. I'm doing this again, this big dragon I have, like I was saying before, I've been working on for the last several days because we actually had snowfall here in North Carolina. It's a rarity when that happens, like legitimate like puffy white snow. Like it was actually pretty cool. And so school shut down the next day, and oddly enough then even the day after that. So we've had essentially the entire week off. We had the first 2 days off because, federal holidays, but we've had essentially the entire week off, which has been nice because I've been able to work on stuff, hang out with my mom and my sister who normally are busy working. I had a friend over who I haven't seen in forever. Like, it's been nice to kind of do that sort of stuff because I feel like I'm just constantly running sometimes. 1, 2, 3, wait, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, just want to make sure I didn't miscount that. And so it's been nice to, we've been just honestly, sitting downstairs in our basement and, just watching, long-form, video retrospective YouTube videos. And I've been working on, there's, first of all, that dragon I had, some people have seen it on stream. I used to have it in here for a little while, but I moved it. I finally finished the body, which was very difficult to finish. Not necessarily because it was hard, but because, there were times when I was doing the pattern, and I'd be like, am I just doing this wrong? Because this feels like I'm just doing this wrong right now. It was just, I followed the pattern, it was working in time with the pattern, and then at some point it would be and then just suddenly the pattern would be I would be following the pattern and it just didn't look right no matter how many times I tried to do it. So eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and guess at what I'm supposed to be doing here based on the pictures in my own knowledge, and hopefully that'll work out. And eventually I did finish the body. I don't know that I did it quite right. It looks a little lumpy in places, but that'll bother me. But the whole point is to sell it, so There are definitely, there are some that I'm like, oh, if I didn't have to sell this, I wouldn't be heartbroken. But, like, most of the time the intention is to sell it. Usually because I've been looking at it for so long that I'm just like, I hate this thing now. So someone else needs to take it and love it in their own house. But, the only one I've made that I've not sold is the one I've shown before, is my Angel Guardian I have over here. I'll show her again, just because she's right next to me. This is my Jolteon. Because I have to have an abundance of cute things. But I have my little Angel Guardian here. She's made entirely out of velvet plush yarn. Very soft. Very, very nice weight to it. It also has a really kind of cool texture to it. Almost like those kind of like temperature pillows. But this is the only one probably I will not sell because it took a long time to make. Not necessarily because it was hard, but just because the yarn I was using is thick and heavy. So it's a little bit of a hand to work out to work with it. And, it just took a little bit. But also because it was my first one where I was really like, trying to make something like just because I wanted to make it, as opposed to, oh, I'm going to sell this. It was the first time I went in and was like, I just want to make this because I really like this yarn and this was a pretty easy pattern and I think that'd be cute. And I added some like, stylization. I gave it cute little cheeks. I gave it some like rings around its horns. Like, so it was one of those ones where I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to sell this one because I put a lot of effort into it and I really like it. And I think the amount of money I would want for it in order to part with it is something that people probably wouldn't pay. So, like, I'm holding on to that one. But, like, most of the other ones, I'll be like, I would like to, keep this. But, like, my one that Madeline calls it my Nouvelette Dragon. But it was this dragon pattern I had that I've been wanting to do for a while. And, it was kind of themed after the guy from Genshin Impact. Not entirely. I didn't go in with the intention of being like, I'm going to make this look like Nouvelette. But I was going kind of water ice dragon vibes. And then when I added all the colors in, and she's like, this is like the same cuts thing. And then he also had like, I used white fur yarn for like the ridges on the back. And she's like, that looks like his hair. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you can call it the Nouvelette Dragon if you want to. That's fine. But, I would have been fine if I kept that one with me the whole time, but eventually there was someone who was willing to pay $75 for it, so, then it's theirs. And even then, honestly, for that size of plush, I probably was even undercutting myself there. I tend to undercut my prices, like, they tell you to, price something based on the amount of time it takes you, then the, like, amount of materials you use, But that's just a difficult way to price things because, I tend to buy my yarn on sale for starters. Second of all, I don't measure my skeins before and after. Like some people will measure their skeins to be like, I used this many grams of yarn, and divided by the price at which I bought it this has how much it costs to use this yarn, and that's just way too much math. I would not care to keep track of things. To that extent, at least. But, and also, even if I'm using, like, this is the second Bonnie I've made a bunch of withered Bonnies. I've not made them exactly the same each time, because it is always, I'm using a pattern, and then I'm doing alterations, and I'm kind of going off of memory to some extent. Hypothetically, the smart thing to do would be to write these things down, but, I just haven't. It's an extra step I have to sit down and do. And I have such limited attention span most times. So, like, my whole thing that I will, do is that I'm like, okay, I do things more based on size. So the size of my plush thing, and also the level of detail, how long it took me to do it. I do take that into consideration. Like, how much did I hate doing this pattern? So, like, I originally sold them for $25. I now sell my little plush babies here, my little Freddies, for $35, which I think is fair. I mean, they're about 6 or 7 inches tall, and a lot of them have like unique detailing. So they all take a little bit of sewing. So I think that's fair. Also, sometimes the bigger thing is that like sometimes I see the prices of like things I see at markets because I go and check out everyone else, and it'll be like people will be selling for the same $35. I'll be selling for like things I have that are essentially custom made video game characters, and I'll be saying someone has that just like it'll be like again like a cow. It's a well made one, but they're charging $42 for that, and that's like not a custom made thing. It's not I know exactly what kind of yarn it is because I can kind of tell by feel at this point. And I'll be like, I know this, and I know where this pattern's from. They did some alterations to it, which is great. Which is not to throw down anyone else's work. I just know that, like, crochet stuff from someone who bought it first before they started making it, I kind of have an understanding of, like, pricing tends to be on the higher range rather than the lower range. Especially if there's lots of pieces, or if there was, like, sewing involved, or, you know, any sort of detailing. And some people undercut themselves, some people overcharge themselves. Like the big Bonnie I made not too long ago, I sold before Christmas. I think I sold it for $65, and I was really undercutting myself there. It was actually, it was like, you know, this is something that was like half the size of a person, used 3 skeins of yarn, actually 4 skeins of yarn, of like the big ones. I probably could have sold that for $85, but I didn't at the time. Because I didn't really know how to price things. So if I made that one again with that kind of yarn, I would probably price it for $85 because it was a very large creation, and it took a while to make. So, you know. I also just kind of want people to, like, you know, go home and enjoy the things I make. So I'm kind of like, you know, you go home and take this. But I'm like, at the same time, also, like, I also need to price my things fairly to myself. And, like, because there's always this instinct to lower your prices if things aren't moving, but you're like, if someone wants it, this is something I tell me and my sister when we're at markets. I'm like, never offer discounts at a market. Offer deals, perhaps, but never offer discounts. Because I'm like, if someone's picking it up and handing you and being like, I want these 3 things, you know, they are ready to pay that price. Because I remember the one time, it was our first market, so we didn't really, you know a ton at the moment, but our first market, we were selling, like, I had, like, 2 snakes and an Essie, or something like that. It was, like, I had multiple things that were being sold. It was, or, like, maybe it was one of my sister's paintings, she paints on glass, and, like, paints, like, you know, cartoons, and, like, her own cute little things on glass. She's making stickers now, which I think are really cute. She made some really cute designs for, has-been hotel stickers, but... So she said, like, oh, you're buying all 3 of these things? Well, normally that would cost you, you know... Normally that would cost you, it was like... It was like $45 or something. She's like, but I'll give it to you for $30. I'm like, Madeline, if they picked up all 3 of those things... I let her get away from it now, because she's like, oh, buy 2, get 1 type of deal. And like, Madeline, if they picked up all 3 of those things and were handing you their credit card, they are ready to pay that price. You know? Now, if you go and give them something and they bought a lot of things and maybe you had a good conversation with them, you might throw in an extra thing for free, like a print or a sticker, something that doesn't take a lot of time to make and reproduce. But I'm like, I wouldn't throw in an extra crochet thing, and I wouldn't throw in like an extra painting, because those are things that take us a while, which we only have 1 of. So, you know, like, they're not an easy recreation thing. That's just, you know, not being fair to ourselves. So, you know, it's a hard thing to judge by. Because the way I think of it is that art is a thing that is never appreciated as much as it should be. So I'm always kind of like, you know, don't obviously get greedy with the prices, but also I'm like, you gotta value yourself as well, I guess. And even though I can make this like, I'm making this Bonnie and I've made it before and I can make it again, like, I think I still have to charge reasonably for it. Because I think it's a high quality product that deserves a decent price tag, you know? And again, people who want that thing, most of the things I make are unique in the fact that I might not make them again. This I obviously will, this is not a hard pattern. But like, if I'm making one of my like variations, then I might not make it again. Because it might be, like the one that I've made 3 times now, which I did not want to make 3 times, but I did because I had a commission, was I had Funtime Freddy. And the only reason I don't like making Funtime Freddy is because I have to do his little hand puppet. It's not an easy thing to do because it's so small. And there's really no exact rhyme or reason to it. I kind of just do it by eye, so it's a little bit of trial and error. And again, it's small, so it can be a little bit more frustrating to work with the chenille yarn, like I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to tie up my chenille yarn, and the fuzz is just falling right off. Like, it's not an easy thing to do, you know, and so I don't particularly like making the pattern. For some reason, people love it, though, so, like, I made it once, I'm like, okay, I'm never doing that again, and then my sister had it on our Etsy shop as a pre-order, so someone else ordered it, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll make it again, And so I'm like, okay, second time, I'm not making this one again. I don't like making this one. I don't want to make it again. And so she was taking it down, opened our shop for like literally one day because we were at market. And then, go figure, someone ordered another one of those Fun Time Freddies. And after that, I'm like, Madeline, politely, I love you, but take that off our shop. I do not want to make this again. I don't like making that hand puppet. It's, if I didn't have to make that, otherwise I wouldn't care. But I'm like, I did not like making that hand puppet. So I'm like, I don't want to make this again. I never want to make something and then hate it. I never want to make something and then be like, okay, 15, 6, 15. I never want to get to the point where that's the thing I kind of have to balance myself with. That's why we're never going all in on this business thing, because we don't want to turn it into something that is a mechanical thing. It should still always be something that I do because I enjoy. But the biggest thing is just that, like, I like crocheting things. I like creating things. It's a fun thing for me. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But, like, I don't ever want to become a, like, obligation or something I have to do because I need products for my con. And that was kind of the thing I've run into a few times when we're getting ready for markets. Like, the one time I tried to push out that one dragon, I had the Neuvillette dragon, in 1 week. And I kind of hated working with the yarn by the end of the week because I was just, constantly pushing myself to be like, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done. And I didn't like it anymore. Like, I was actually kind of hating going back to my yarn. It felt like an obligation then. So I was like, I have to make sure I pace myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. I want to make sure. It never hurts to double count your stitches. But I'm like, I don't want to hate this thing. I do. I like doing it, and I like the challenge of it, and I like it's a soothing, almost kind of fidget thing for me. So, like, my one friend who does craft fairs with us, she makes dice, and she'll be watching my streams. She's like, I don't know how you can hold a conversation while you're crocheting and stuff like that. I'm like, because one, I'm usually doing a pattern I'm very familiar with, and I'm like, if all I have to do is count every so often, or I'm doing an AB pattern or something like that, then it's not that hard. And it's also kind of like a fidget thing. I'm not actively thinking about what I'm doing with my fingers. In fact, I had to do recently. I was paid to go and tutor someone who was trying to learn how to crochet. To be fair, I went into it being like, I can do this, and I didn't realize the person who was doing it is left-handed. And so then I was like the whole time trying to be like, okay, now I'm going to try and teach this backwards. Because there's a different way you do it if you're doing this left-handed, and I did not know that going in, so I was a little prepared for that task. But even just trying to teach it basically, sometimes I have to slow down and be like, okay, it's become such a natural ingrained thing for me that's like automatic almost. That's slowing down that process and trying to be like, wait, how do I actually crochet a stitch? It's like one of those things where you're like, you spell a word that like you know very well, and you've always known how to spell that word, but when you stop and stare at it, you're like, wait, is that how you spell that? That looks wrong for some reason. And that's the way I'll get, if I'm trying to like teach how to do this, I'll be like, I know how to crochet a stitch very well. I know how to crochet several kinds of stitches at this point, but like, when I slow it down, I'll be like, wait, am I doing this right? So, that's kind of how it is. It's an automatic thing for me, so I can hold a full conversation like this. But it is kind of that shows I'm getting to the pro level. At the point where you can go and like watch a TV show or a movie, and still keep crocheting. I'm at the point where I can do that, and I can hold conversation and stuff like that. So anyway, the whole thing is that I've been working on my big dragon downstairs the last few days that we've had snow days, which essentially was, and we watched a lot of things. So I had to finish its body, then I was doing its legs, and for some reason, even though I'm doing the exact same pattern 4 times, I have 2 legs that are pointing to the left and 2 legs that are pointing straight. So the legs are going to be crooked on it, and that's going to bother the heck out of me, but again, it doesn't have to matter for me. Just whoever buys it has to like it, so it's definitely going to be one of those items that's going to go for $100, though, because it's like, this thing is huge. Like, it's this big if I, like, squished it together. It's a big thing. When it's done, I'll show it on stream at some point if someone wants to see it. Or I can put it in our Discord chat. That's usually where I also put my crafting stuff. But it's a big, big guy, and he's another one of those things I'm kind of vaguely theming. So it's like the color choices are based off of, again, another Genshin Impact character. So it's essentially my my loose interpretation Rex Lapis thing. It's supposed to be, because I actually haven't gotten to that point in the game yet, but I'm like, I know that Zhongli has a dragon form. It's pretty dang obvious with everything about his character that this is a dragon hiding in human form. The archetype writes itself. Come on, but there's so many hints at it, and I only know it from the marketing. But so the idea was to make this dragon kind of, since it was like an Eastern-looking dragon, like the long-bodied dragon. I was trying to make the color scheme like kind of based off like his color scheme in terms of like what color his coat is and stuff like that. And it doesn't look at all. I looked up actually a picture of what his actual dragon form looks like. I'm like, well, it doesn't look like that at all. But I'm gonna still say it's an Earth dragon, at the very least. I have this brown, gold, and orange dragon. It's gonna be an Earth dragon somewhere or another. But the biggest thing was like, after you did all like the head and like the body was all in one piece, the legs were in 4 different pieces, but then after that, there was a lot of frills and fins and other stuff that, which I like the pattern how they did it. It looks really cool, just it's essentially by like it does like an accordion sort of thing with back loops. It like the pattern, the way they did it with like the frills and stuff like that was cool. It's just like, you need one for the head, and one for the mid-body, and one for the tail. Now 2 more for the head, 2 more for the mid-body, 2 more for the tail, and also 1 for each of the legs, and also 1 for the head. And you're just like, at the end of it, I think I have like 20 some pieces. So I'm gonna have to give my seamstress, aka my mom, who does all my sewing for me. Ever since she's done that, I've been able to make things much faster. Just sewing's not so hard for me. It takes more time. So if like she can sew, I can sew and crochet, so if she sews it, I can continue crocheting other pieces, and then sewing them together. Like she's gonna. I have like a little baby reptar in the downstairs that needs to be put together, and like she can go and do that. So like that's something she she helps me with. So it's all down there. Come on, I'm trying to check something on my phone as we're doing this. Come on. So it's all downstairs. It just needs to be put together. So it's just this big pile of parts right now, which, to be fair, I think is what a lot of people have going. I've heard a lot of different crocheters I watch videos on. No, thank you. I have lots of videos I watch crocheters on for just ideas and tips. Like before I ever start something, I always I always get very into it. I get very researchy before I start something. So I did a lot of trying to look for something at the same time while I'm doing this. I had a lot of research I did beforehand, so I watched a lot of different videos, crocheters, stuff like that. And trying to figure out how to... Where's the thing I'm looking for? I was trying to see where my thing is at, but I guess I can't really do that very easily on my phone. That's the other problem, is something like the mobile accessibility, but yet at the same time, like they put things in different locations when you're trying to look for them on your phone, and you'll be like, when I'm on a full laptop, I know exactly where this thing is, but for some reason when I'm trying to look for it on my phone because I can't get up and check my computer because it's over there and I want to stay on the camera, I don't know where it is. Looks like, jeez. Where is it? Okay. So there's, okay, I can do that, I guess. So, let me see. I can do this. Anyway, I'm just trying to make sure my things are up right now, but... Alright. So, it's just... It's been a long pattern coming, so it's like kind of finishing off this one dragon will be nice to actually finish it. I don't know how good or bad it's going to be. I don't think I'm subjective. I'm pretty subjective at this point now because I've been doing it for so long that I'm kind of just done and ready to move on to another project. But like, at the same time, like I could just keep making small Freddies, and I know I can sell those because they sell it every single time we go to a market. But like, I also want to try new things because I have so many different patterns. Like I have a lot of different Pokemon patterns I've not even tried yet. You know, like there's a lot of things I want to try, but they just take a little longer to do. So like figuring that out, what to do when is just a little bit trickier. I'm gonna try and send something in my chat here for a moment before I get back into. Ever have it where you're like looking for a number in your phone and you're just like, why do I have 14 different versions of this one uh this one like video? I feel like FNAF Sharks and Dragons are gonna always sell well. I do have actually some a pattern for a whale shark because my sister really wants a whale shark. Like I have so many gift ideas in mind for people that like I bought patterns just to make stuff for them and I just not be able to catch up to it because I get commissions and I'm also like being like I should be working on things from our market and again like this angel guardian thing I have is like the last thing I made for myself. Like I think most of the things I make uh in whatever current anime gacha game everyone loves. Well gacha game is Genshin Impact. That's it's a culture into itself at this point. Like it doesn't even matter if the game's good or bad at this point. I've gone on my soapbox before. I'm not getting on that soapbox right now, unless you really want me to. But like I've been on my soapbox before about my feelings about Genshin Impact and stuff like that. But like, it is definitely one of those things that only kind of reminds me of Harry Potter, where it's like it's not. It isn't even the game at this point. I think people love. It's the concept of it. It's the world. It's the characters, it's the designs, it's the merch, it's like, it's the fandom around it that keeps the thing going. Hazbin Hotel did the same thing too for a while. Like it literally survived on a singular pilot for 4 years and had a pretty thriving fandom in spite of that. Like it's the fans are just so into it and they love and like Mally told me when she went to Japan, she's like, oh yeah, they had like Genshin Impact stuff on like every single like they were on the subways, on the sides of buildings, on drink bottles, like that company is not afraid to market themselves, even though they seem to always get in the news for all the wrong reasons. But Star Rail gets in the news for mostly good reasons, but I'm like, yeah, in the early days, Genshin seemed to get in the news a lot for the wrong reasons, more because it was a popular thing that I think people just wanted to take down, but it's like, Malian's trying to figure out how to do it because we're going to this anime con. She's like, I know there's going to be like some Genshin Impact voice actors there, so she's like, I'm trying to figure out some stuff to make for them. I'm like, you could just do their emotes and make them into little like cute stickers or uh, uh, paintings because I'm like, I'm trying to think of like how you do that because doing your own original art, especially for human-ish characters, is so much harder. So I'm like, for me, I'm like, I can't make like Genshin Impact crochet characters. Best thing I can do is be like, this thing I'm making is themed off of them, vaguely, very vaguely, but trust me, it is. you know. I'm sending a message at the moment, so bear with me. And yeah, my biggest thing is I'm trying to figure out how to send this to I was trying to send something to my dad, so I have grandparents that do a lot of like at home crafting stuff, and she's like, you should invite them to your streams. I'm like, yeah, I could do that. I don't know if they're ever going to figure out how to do the link, but you know, they're several states away. I can't show them how to do YouTube. I mean, they do know how to do YouTube. I would show them how, like, the easier way to watch me is on Twitch, but like, I don't think they would be able to figure out how to do Twitch. I barely know how to use Twitch, and I actually use it. Okay, let me send that. Alright. Okay, I think we got that finished. Anyway. So, yeah, gosh, it's funny. Every time I feel like going I'm playing Genshin Impact, is I'm always feeling like I have this vibe of like, who's the family IT guy? My dad. My dad. As in, every time that he comes back into town for work business, he goes and makes sure everything in their house has been updated and such. And why is this? It's not because he's the only one who can manage how to do, technology. He's just the only one who actually goes and visits. So, everyone has their own family things they got to do and deal with. And ours is that they live in a burnt out, slowly decaying industrial town where just going there can give you depression. Never mind living there for the entirety of your life. So, yeah, we only go visiting there lately if it's like, you know, some major event like a wedding or a funeral. Like, I think, pretty sure those are the only reasons we've gone there in recent years. Wedding or funeral. Although there's been way more funerals than there've been weddings. That's the biggest thing lately, but such is life. But there's I've got some cousins who know how to work like the Google and stuff like that. But the problem is like it's like very like functional knowledge, so it's kind of like, you know the basics, like how to turn the thing on, but you won't know how to be like, okay, the thing's not connecting, I don't know how to fix that. So like, and again, it also is betting on the fact that there's anyone there, because my grandmas can, I did show my grandmas YouTube, so they know the basics on how to do YouTube. So that's why I'm like, I sent them a link that's a YouTube link that they maybe could figure out. But like, I know that I know they know how to get onto YouTube, but I also know that that is a basic functioning knowledge at best. And my one grandma definitely downloaded viruses before. Cause she's like, I just clicked on the thing and said I was supposed to do this. I'm like, Grandma, there are people online who are trying to do mean things to you, and I know it sucks, but you don't know how to truly do something until you have to teach a grandparent via by phone. Yes, very true. I had taught my grandma how to use Amazon and Etsy that way. She's like, I didn't realize I could just order things online and it just comes right to me. I'm like, yeah, wonders of modern technology. In fact, half the time my grandma's like, I'm trying to order something. I'm like, well, tell me what it is. I'll order it at my end, and then I'll ship it to you, and it'll end up at your doorstep. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah. All I have to enter is a different address, and your card's already loaded on your account, and I'll go on, I'll select the things you're looking for, and then it will show up in your house in 2 days. Like, it's magic. So I did teach my I remember when I originally, it actually was a while back. I originally taught my one grandma how to access YouTube, because I wanted to do a fourth Doctor, like from Doctor Who, cosplay, and his biggest thing is that he has a 12-foot long scarf. So, I found a pattern for that online. I told my grandma, I'm like, wouldn't it be really cool if you could do something like this? And she's like, well, I know how to knit. I probably could figure it out. I'm a little rusty on it, but I'm like, I probably could figure it out. So I taught her how to use YouTube. So she could look up, like, tutorials on how to, for certain knitting things that she didn't know how to do yet. And then she's like, now she's very proud. She's like, I can do the YouTube now. I'm like, yes, the YouTube. You're right, Grandma. You're correct. That's exactly how we say it. She also does the Facebook and the Instagram. The proper article, which I think is always funny. But, I did teach her how to do those things. And that's the thing I think is also, is that you're willing, usually no matter how old you are or how young you are, I think if you're willing to learn how to do the thing because you have a goal in mind, you're much more willing to learn it. Like, for instance, like, everyone's always like, I would love to learn a new language, but unless you have, like, a real, like, motivator as to why, then you don't really do it. Like, I taught myself pretty much how to crochet because, my grandma came down, and I'm like, do you know how to crochet? You think you could teach me the basics? Because I had been buying them at markets, and my sister was like, especially when she's looking at the prices, she's like, because some people do overcharge, I think. But, it's an art, but sometimes people are just like, okay, that's ridiculous for that small of a thing, for that simple of a pattern. Like, they'll have like this small little thing and be asking for $40, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. There's no way that costs that much, in materials or in time. But she's like, she would go into markets and be like, hey, you could do this sort of thing. Like, you're good with your hands. You're crafty and stuff like that. I'm betting you could do it. I'm like, maybe. So eventually I do sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and do this. I tried to do a basic, like, how-to, tutorial on the basics in crocheting, and I'm just like, okay, this is not working. Like, the hooks I was working with I didn't care for, and, like, the yarn I was using was thin, so it was hard to see what I was doing. And so then later on, my grandma comes down, and she's like, we can learn how to do it together. So I just like, okay, let's just choose a pattern. I think the first thing we did was a whale. 13, 5, 12. And, like, we just sat there and we just went, like, second by second. I had the computer in front of the two of us. And I just paused and stopped and, like, just, until we gradually learned how to crochet and figure out how to do this whale. And the first one I did, I look at it, I'm like, wow, this thing is ugly. But my sister says I cannot sell it because it's my first thing I ever made. I'm like, what? I'm like, this, but it's gross. I don't want to keep it. She's like, well, it's important. It's sentimental value. I'm like, okay, fine. But after that, it was like, just trying different patterns. And, like, when I, for some reason, kind of just took to it very easily. So I just kind of, like, watched the videos, and then I kind of just could figure out how to do it. And because the first thing is figuring out how to do it, and then the second step is figuring out how to apply it. So, like, you might watch the video and be like, okay, if I mimic what they do, then I can do it with my hands, but then afterwards recognizing, like, oh, what I did with my hands was a half double crochet, that's the next step. It's like first figuring out how to do the thing, and then realizing how you did the thing and what the thing actually was that you did is, different steps. But that's why people don't believe. I told them, like, I don't think I've yet crocheted for a year. I started in April of last year. So I've not yet been crocheting for a year yet. So, and yet I own, like, 300 skeins of yarn and I've, 500 patterns. Like, people don't believe that when I tell them that whenever we're, like, at markets and stuff. I'm like, no, it's like, how long have you been doing this? I'm like, 9 months now, maybe? Like, it's not been a year yet. I've been crocheting as long as I've had my Instagram account, my Dusk Crochet account. That's how long I've been crocheting. And that count's not a year old yet, so. It's weird, because the time feels like it passes so much faster than it actually does. But yeah, they're like, wow, you're this good after that much time? Like, I got lucky. This was something that I just kind of took to pretty quickly and kind of figured out. And, it's a pain in the butt sometimes. But, sometimes the autism and the ADHD can be helpful. Because it means sometimes that, like, when you really get into something with hyperfixation and stuff like that, sometimes you just pick up something and it clicks. And then you can just run with it. And other times you'll be doing something and be like, I have no clue how this works. I don't know how the heck I'm going to ever make this work. And why is everyone else picking this up, like, better than me, you know? I think it's the way I'm sitting, but my one shoulder hurts. I'm trying to rub it out. Could also be how I'm sitting. That's also entirely a possibility. But yeah, so we so I just kind of figured it out. Ouch. I like the me and Melanie both will be sitting there and be like, you know, us and our messed up bodies because we slouch or lean to one side, or in my particular case, I carry all my tension in my left shoulder. So like if I ever had a hard day at work or something like that, my shoulder will hurt because I'll carry all my tension like right here. So that'll hurt at the end of the day. But anyway, so I just kind of picked it up, and then like, you know, that's also kind of how like art works though too, and that's, you know, like self-taught artist, self-taught writer. I've always been that way, which means I learn a little. Ironically, it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, I never learn the proper way first. I kind of just look at what the things I like. So like, if I might be a big reader, or I might want, you know, like dragons. So I'll go and I'll look at the thing. I'm very good at mimicking things. Again, so many clues as a youth that I was autistic, and it was like, the biggest thing about that is, again, being able to mimic things, but not necessarily do the things naturally yourself. That's literally what masking is. Masking is literally going to, like, is looking at the people around you and then coming up with a mask that matches that in order to fit in. You know, so, like, I'm very good at looking at something and copying it. So it's what makes me a fairly good editor and stuff like that. But I could, you know, that's the way I learned how to do art. That's the way I learned how to do writing. Is you see a thing, you take a thing, and like learn a little thing, something from it each time, and every time you make a little bit of an improvement and a change. But I've never really taken any like professional art classes. I've taken a few in college, and maybe one or two in high school. But like I was never professionally trained in art. Like it wasn't like something I like. Oh, I looked at books and I looked at things. Like I read books, of course, but it was more like I looked at things and just tried to copy it with my fingers, which meant that, you know, it took me a while to learn the basics of art. So I kind of learned things backwards. That's also how I learned math. I learned math backwards. It's a beautiful thing when your head doesn't work the same way everyone else's head works. So you kind of have to translate it for yourself and then translate it from everyone else. Though apparently that's why I'm a good teacher. Or at least I'm good at... People always tell me I'm good at teaching things. Like, especially because they're like, you have a good way of, like... You can take something that's complex and make it into a very easily digestible content. I'm like, well, yeah, that's probably because that's how I have to exist every single day. Not to say that's, you know, like, not to pity party myself, but, like, that is legitimately how it works. Like, you go up to someone and you talk to someone and, you know, you might have your own anxieties and socials and stuff like that. Or you might go and see a process and just do it. I have to go translate it into my language so I can understand it, translate it from what they're saying, make a conversion rate, and then figure out my own thing from that. So, like, whenever I'm learning something, I usually have to learn the way it's done for them, learn the way I would do it, and then bridge the gap between those two concepts. So it means, like, when I'm trying to teach someone something, I'm very... That's also apparently an anxiety thing too, is that like you are super precise with the details because the less room there is for confusion or misdirection or miscommunication, the more control you have over the situation, and the less room there is for like stuff to happen. I do that and I still screw that up all the time. I did that recently when I was doing my last D&D session where I'm just like, I think I misread so many things in that situation, but I didn't realize until after the fact, so the whole time you're just kind of sitting there being like, you know, wanting to go to your like group and be like, hey, can we just retcon the last session and acknowledge it didn't exist? Because it was wrong on so many levels. Like, you know, can we just nuke it and just pretend it didn't happen? Because there were so many things I just did not think for or did not think about, or, you know. It's funny, you can be a very empathetic person but still have difficulty understanding people. Because, unfortunately, when it comes to talking to people very rarely say outright what they mean, and usually when you try and question to ask for more information to better understand a situation, people think of it as either you're trying to be smart with them, or you're trying to, like, that there's something wrong, and you're like, no, legitimately, I just want to know exactly what this is. This is my issue also. I remember when at college, I had issues debating, like, hot topics, like, either political topics, cultural topics, race topics, anything, any of the big things that could get you in trouble on Twitter, pretty much. I had always issues talking with those things with classmates. Not for any, I, at least I don't think so. Again, this is me looking back now with, I guess, some context, but it would always be like, I would say things and be like, why do I think this thing works this way? I remember for a while I would talk to my one friend about, like, at the time it was a new thing about, like, Donald Trump becoming president. And so I'd be like, okay, based on the information I have about this guy, this is my opinion. And I'm like, I don't really care one way or the other, but also I'm like looking at him and then looking at, like, the other candidate at the time. I think was Hillary Clinton the first time. I don't know. And my, like, whole thing was like, he's bad, she's worse, politics sucks. And, like, I remember I got some really nasty comments for even implying that he could be a good president because he was a good businessman, and I'm like, I think I'm missing something here. I'm looking at this, I think I look at things, like, just too robotically, I guess, sometimes, because I look at things and be like, well, this means this, and that means this, so therefore this should be the conclusion, right? And people be like, no, and I'm like, oh, alright. So there's one thing that makes people quiet down real fast. It's the idea of getting something wrong and failing someone, and someone thinking less of you because of something you said. Gosh, I feel that way all the time. I had one person I used to chat with online on Discord. We're just gonna air all this. I was gonna talk about movies today, and right now I start talking about my grandparents, and now I'm talking about other stuff. Gosh, sometimes that's why I never put chat topics for my streams, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna talk about. I won't know when I start talking about it. I won't know by the end of it what I actually did talk about. Like, I digress so much that I'll be like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I won't know until it actually happens. But I had this friend, well, he was a friend at the time. I've unfortunately been through, 90% of the friendships I've had in life have been abusive friendships. So, unfortunately, that's, has to do with the fact of, again, me not being able to always read people and always having the most hope and patience for people and taking people genuinely at their word. And also, not understanding the things that matter a lot to me might not necessarily matter to everyone else. Again, a lot of it is just not realizing for the majority of life that the way I communicate is not the way everyone else does. And that's not a bad thing. I understand that now, and I try and tell myself that now, at least sometimes. But, like, I would always make friends with people who were, like, I don't want to say damaged, but just people who were, my mom always says, like, the weirdest of the weird. So, like, they're your typical nerds, but then there's the ones that, like, give you a lot of red flags, but I'm going to be like, hey, I've always been that outcast person that's just looking for a friend to talk to, so I'll be the person that they can talk to. And I never saw it as, like, I'm trying to save this person thing. It would just be like, hey, this person returned my conversation. They actually remember what my name is. And they let me just talk about Pokemon for hours. This is great. So I accidentally ended up in a relationship in college. I like talking for hours on end. And I guess that was a signal or some other thing that turned into, hey, we're dating now. And I'm just like, oh, all right. Is it really just an automatic thing? I have to say, is it really just an automatic thing to be like, hey, you want to go get dinner sometime? I'm like, yeah, I like food and we can talk more. I did not realize that was, hey, do you want to start dating? Not to mention I have a weird, like, relationship with that anyway. I'm a bit of a, like, I love reading romantic stuff. I like romantic tropes. But the thing is, like, it's never really been about romance for me. It's always been about the idea of, like, having someone that just understands you and listens to you. And that, two people being able to connect on a deep emotional level. To the point where you don't have to write up all the romance. You don't have to write up all, like, they talk to each other and they kind of just get it. That sort of bond has always been something that very much intrigues me, so that's why I like reading about it and stuff. So, like, you could say I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic in that part, but, like, I don't know. I think genuine romance that I ever were to encounter, I think I would just get shy about because I have so much trouble taking compliments and stuff like that. So having a time where I have to focus on just me and someone telling me how awesome I am, it's hard to swallow sometimes. This is probably why I get so drawn to the characters that are like that in life. But oh gosh, I'm regressing so much right now. Anyway, can't start talking about fan fiction. Um, Why you mean you're awesome? Thanks. It's just more like, I don't know. It's like if someone goes and tells you a thing and you can look at it and be like, yes, I see that thing and I understand it. But then, like, I guess when you're stuck with yourself all the time, everyone else is like, this is so amazing that you do that. I'm like, I'm with me all the time, so I see this all the time, so it doesn't seem that impressive to me. I guess that's just perspective taking. I just find it very hard to take a compliment. Like, again, because it's something I've kind of done all the time, but I always feel like it's almost like when you take the compliment and then you acknowledge that you're good at something, you have to make something of that. That also probably is a little bit of family trauma coming in there, but, you know, I was called for a long time a great artist, the great writer, and stuff like that. And then, you know, a lot of those people that gave me all those pep talks and stuff as a kid and an early teenager now have had their own mental breakdowns on, like, literal levels that require the police. So, yeah, weird stuff. People in the North can be crazy. And I know because we all came from there and we're all crazy. Anyway, it's everything I say is with love. Just assume that. Or assume, again, I am neurodivergent, and if I say anything that's offensive, I'm not perceiving it as that in the moment. But that's the thing, that's why I always say people are like, you know, we love you doing you, and I'm like, well, I don't know how to be anyone else, and I've tried. What you see is what you got, and, you know, stitch got stuck. Come on. Generally, this yarn doesn't catch on too bad, because the toucan stuff I use is soft, but it's not quite as delicate as the other yarns I use, so it is a bit better. Okay, so I do one and then I decrease, yeah, okay. But, okay. So that's there. Just making sure that I'm on the right stitch here. So, one. Essentially just so, like, you know, it was almost like the idea of, like, it kind of is the idea, like, the mentality of, like, if I don't have expectations, I can't be let down. And then just apply that to, like, yourself. Like, if I don't have expectations for myself, then I can't let anyone down. And that was the mentality I had for a while, because I had all these people that would be telling me, like, you're a great artist, you do some really good stuff, and then you almost feel like there's this expectation for, like, once you have that, like, greatness, that you're expected to do something with it. And I struggled with this for a while. I still struggle with it a lot now, even when I, like, let myself think about it, but, like, there's the idea that, like, you know, once you are a good writer, you're expected to write a book. Once you are a good artist, they're expecting you to turn that into a job field somehow. You know, like, it's, the idea of, again, I remember seeing a thing about, on Instagram, I think, it's like, we need to turn it into a trauma condition, where it's like, how many kids who were told that they were gifted as children and who are now living, a life of trying to achieve perfectionism and never being satisfied with what they have and feeling like even the slightest failure will cause everyone to leave them. You know, and they're like, the joke was like, you know, what sort of trauma condition would you call that? And I'm like, it's true though. You know, it's cool being called gifted or luminary or whatever like that, but the problem is that, like, if you could just live like that and be fine, but, like, man, we're in this day and age where, like, no jobs for, like, my generation exist that can give you the money to live and, like, have a house. I don't really want one, but, like, I think I'd be an apartment person my whole life, honestly. Or maybe a small house. I could take a small house. But, like, or have a car, or gosh, have a family, Like, hey, it's nice that you're talented and stuff like that, but you can't turn that into a job. Well, then what use is it? Heck, that's why we sell our stuff now, is that we're like, well, this is our attempt to turn something that we really enjoy. But God, if I know, right? My brother's girlfriend is like that. She has there's like four of them just for one run apartment. I'm like, honestly, no shame at all to. There should be no shame at all for people who decide to go back to live with their parents. We do that largely because we've always had a large house because we've always all lived here. So the fact that we moved back in to just take up our old rooms that were not being used for anything anyway, and now we just kind of have a floor to ourselves and stuff like that. Like, there's no shame in that because how else are you supposed to live? And I have my stuff I can do here, and it's also kind of one of those things that's like the difference between some people, Madeline, like, always is concerned about, like, I feel like people look down on us because of we live here. I'm like, why? Have they tried to live out there by themselves with a basic teaching job? It's not achievable. Because also, for some reason, North Carolina has a thing against teachers. Like, you can go into a lot of other states, and they have way better benefits for teachers. But yeah, trying to be a teacher in North Carolina in 90% of the time is you have teaching, and then you have another job so that you can actually afford to be a teacher. Because there's no way you can manage the budget on its own. It's just kind of sad. Anyway. But the whole point being is that, like, trying to teach the new generation what's wrong with you. I know, right? Well, unfortunately, it's the one thing I kind of always seem to fall back into because I do genuinely enjoy sharing information I have with other people. That's why I like teaching. I like to make connections with people, and for some reason I'm better at doing that with people who are not my own age. I've always been that way, though, as a person. I would make friends with people who are in higher grades or lower grades because for some reason, if I saw people on the same level, like an equal, it was difficult, but like if it was on a different level, then I could try and connect with people. So, teaching, I think, I don't know the official term, there's like a personality thing. I'm like a caretaker, essentially. I like taking care of people. I like, someone needs a sandwich, I make them a sandwich. If someone's had a long day, I make them a, hot drink or something like that. Like, I like taking care of people. Because I think, again, it comes from a thing of, like, I've always wanted that myself. So I always be like, I like to give that in return. So that's why I've always been kind of enjoyed teaching. Is that I'm like, I just, I like to care for people. There's not enough of it in the world. That, unfortunately, is also why I tend to run into a lot of abuse in friendship, is that I just like to care for people. And that's fine, to a point, till eventually you realize those people that you've been doing with are very damaged and need to have therapists, and if you try to tell them they need to have a therapist, all of a sudden that you're the enemy. But I've only talked 2 or 3 people down from unaliving themselves. I've had most friendships I've had in life usually last about 2 years, that's the ADHD talking. It's usually you get same old stuff, ADHD. Like, people who have that usually don't last very long. in the sort of mundane jobs that are the same day to day because your brain craves a new stimulation and a new puzzle to deal with. So that's why like people with ADHD usually do not do well with desk jobs. Okay, 3, 4, 1. Okay. So it's because you like are looking for something new to not necessarily even like new in terms of it's like your brain literally has been like, we've finished this task. It's no longer giving us anything. We need to find a new one. So that's why you'll change jobs a lot. And that which pretty much is the same for me. Like every job I've held, I usually hold for about 2 years or so. And that was a way for a while how like my friendships lasted too. It was like about 2 years or so, because it wasn't even usually like sometimes it was drift apart, but usually it was like exploded spectacularly at the end. And it's only kind of weird. It's only more weird that it happened so many times than if anything, just because it was like, I'm not making this stuff up, guys. This really happened. That's the thing. I'm like, all of the relationships I've been through, mostly in the friendship category, but even in the romantic category, have all been like great stories to tell later in life because they're one of those things that you're just like, yep, I'm not making this up. Like this legitimately happened. I still don't know entirely if the one really close friendship I had in middle school was a girl having a crush on me or not. In hindsight, it definitely seems that way, but I was none the wiser at the time, so that's just me not being great at reading social signals. But, if you end your messages with, love you, I always thought that was like, a regular thing to do. Like, that's what I thought. Yeah, it's, we know each other like, yeah. It's, yeah, you and Mirrors both are like the two that I'm kind of like hold in incredibly high esteem at this point in life, just because I'm like, you lasted this long at this point, like that's gotta be a record. Definitely cornerstones of my like social identity. That's the thing, like, I always, like, valued very highly. I'm like, if this person's stayed around this long, then it must be something special. They must really actually want to be around me, And also, because it's amazing how many friendships you could have where, like, you got out of communication. This also could be the fact that I usually tended to make friends with people who were very isolated to begin with, and were kind of strange, and maybe on the really needy side. But, like, you lose contact with someone and then there's like, it's a big offense. And I'm like, I've always been of the opinion that like at any given point we can just kind of come back together and things can be normal again. And then, I realized for a while that 90% of the time that is not the way it goes. Which was a surprise. So sometimes I just kind of let things like be like, I just would get quiet about stuff. But amount of times I wouldn't have gone into a thing and be like, I don't think we're communicating on the same level here. Can we part graciously? And then it explodes spectacularly. You're like, oh, right, well, at the very least that's a story I'm going to tell later on in life, maybe on a live stream someday. But it's you say I love you to most people, yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that I always perceived it as something that was like, oh, that makes sense. And then, like, later on, I'd be like, oh, no, some people mean that in, like, a literal, like, I love you as a, like, romantic gesture or, like, a confession of feelings. And, like, for the longest while, I did think that was just like, oh, that's normal. But then once I realized that, like, that could not be normal, then I'm like, oh, great. I needed something else to put my anxiety into. Because then you're like, that's the thing I say is probably the thing I struggle with the most is that idea, is that how many things can people say one thing and mean another thing entirely? You don't realize how many there are out there until you go and talk with someone else and be like, no, I knew that. That's just how, like, didn't you realize that, or didn't you understand that? And I'm like, no, I didn't actually. You just automatically did? What sort of codex is in your brain that you can just decipher these things? And, people very rarely say what they mean. Not a bad thing necessarily, but just when you're in life and you don't like have that natural born like this is how life happens, then it's a strange thing. Okay, these I never tell if I have my arms on straight or backwards. I'm pretty sure that goes that way. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I had one where like I had a close friend who and that's the thing, it's something to laugh about now in life, but like me saying like, oh yeah, I got into a relationship by accident. I'm like, yeah, it's funny now, I'll admit, but do you know how hard it made literally every other friendship I ever had with a guy after that? Because I always would be like, I enjoy your presence. I'm glad you enjoy my presence and we can talk together. But then there's also this thing in the back of my head that's being like, okay, how long before they're going to want to do something to change things up, and I'm not going to be able to keep up, and they're going to want something, I'm not going to feel anything, and I'm going to feel bad, and then what we had was good is not going to be good anymore, and it's not like quite, it's essentially like, I don't know why people fear the friend zone. Like, I think that is the ideal place to be with anyone. Because I'm like, think about it, in sitcoms, long-running friendships last way longer than any sort of romantic thing that ever happens in a show. If you're in a romantic relationship in a TV show, it's not long for this world. Because, romances only ever end in conflict if TV teaches you anything. Not that real romance works that way, but it's just one of those things when you're like, what's so bad about just hanging out, enjoying each other's presence? Essentially, it's the idea that the thing that always bothers me is this like unspoken like contract or expectation and not being able to meet it because you don't know what it is. And the fact that like people say things and just expect that you know what it means, and you just feel very just alienated by that, where you're just like, am I just dumb if I need to ask what that means? And on the other hand, it's like, you're embarrassed too, because you're like, I should know what this means, and just asking about it makes me feel dumb because I don't. And what's wrong with me that I don't? Like, it's a mess. I blame modern romance movies. But, like, I just go and, like, it was, like, I always accepted I would be hanging out with guys because I like video games, and at the time, I enjoyed eating. COVID ruined that for me. So now, like, eating is always a stressful experience, unfortunately, but yay, anxiety. But, like, I always accepted, like, if I wanted to talk about things I like, so that was, like, Pokemon and stuff like that. Usually that ended up being guys. Or gay girls. But, like, for some reason you couldn't find someone that's just like, no, I'm just a person. And you're like, there's, like, so many, like, expectations and requirements, and sometimes you're just like, I just want to talk about things. And then my mom's like, well, you need to let the other person talk every once in a while. I'm like, I know. That's why no one wants to talk to me, because I don't shut up. But, you also just have, like, again, this expectation that, like, if you hang out with a guy for a while, there's just this expectation. Or even if, honestly, who knows how many girls I might have hung out with for a while and people were expecting something to come of that. My brother's girlfriend expects that now. She's like, you see someone hanging out with and that could be a potential romantic interest, and then they're like, so when is that going to happen? I'm like, what's going to happen? I've already kind of me and my sister have both come to the idea that we are probably going to live with each other for the rest of our lives, and we're totally cool with that. Because we know how each other work, we understand each other very deeply, and we don't have anyone else that is, like, in that level of importance in our lives. And also because, do you really need to have, like, another person? The problem is that, like, I don't know anyone else who can get me, because it's, like, it's going to take a while to get me. And even then, I'm in insecure attachment style, so it's going to take a while for me to feel that kind of trust level too. And then always again there's the question of, like, when you move from friendship to, like, dating or something like that, it's like, well, then what changes? having this conversation is hard. Every time I try and have a deep emotional conversation with someone, it ends up with me writing like an essay length thing of my thoughts, none of it coming through, me either coming off as too strong or emotionless or something like that, and then I'm like, wow, glad we had this talk, and I pretty much just made it all worse. Cool. I now get 3 points of emotional trauma. Nice. And a free pin. That's just the way it rolls sometimes. But again, it's one of the things that I'm like, I don't think I'm necessarily bothered by it. It's more like I talk about it to be like, does anyone? It's kind of like you're almost listening for an echo. You're saying it out loud to be like, has anyone else felt this way or seen this or had this experience? So kind of the reason I went for a diagnosis, I've said this before, is just to be like, I'm not crazy, am I? Like this is a natural thing, right? I'm not looking at chat, unfortunately. I mean, if you're doing it right, the person you're in a relationship with is going to be one of your best friends. I don't know, not much really, but is referencing to. But yeah, that's what I always assumed. But essentially, sometimes you're just. Again, this is something I kind of just deal with myself. It's like you sometimes are just stuck with this feeling of otherness, like you're not really inside you. You're watching everything from the outside. Sometimes you just get struck with this, like, something's weird about me. Survives. So sometimes you just want to be like, don't ask me things, don't question things, just, exist in the same space with me for a little while. I've what they call that, parallel play. It's like when you go and like you do a hobby and someone else does a hobby and you both just sit in the same room and do hobbies next to each other. That's something that like me and my sister do all the time. And sometimes it's also just hard to be like genuinely like vulnerable. Because especially when you're like someone who's like, I've never had like big horrible things, but like you go and talk to someone and you'd be like, okay, we can share a lot of stuff together. And then sometimes you always go and I'm always just like, I've been working on this with recent years, but like sometimes you're always being ready for like, where's the escape hatch? How long is this going to last? That was literally the way I looked at friendships for a long time. It got a little bigger in college, but for a while that was just like, I'm like, okay, I can maintain a friend. This almost looks too big. Maybe I use bigger eyes than normal. That looks bigger than it normally does. But I would go and just have a timer on it and be like, this will last the typical amount of time, and just be ready because then it's predictable and it's one of those things that in hindsight after reading like a lot of fanfics you're like, oh, I have issues. That makes sense now. It's funny how many times you go and look at the characters that you enjoy the most and be like, oh, that's why I like that, because I have that same emotional trauma. Good to know. But like you go and share so many things. That's why I will chat with people on Discord a lot. Like I've had many online friendships where I just want to go and talk for like paragraphs and paragraphs about my characters. And so then the person in turn will talk for paragraphs and paragraphs about their characters. And we'll chat and we'll talk and stuff like that. And then but most of the time the way it would end is being like, you come closer, you become friends, and then eventually either the person just drops off the face of the earth, or it's happened to me once or twice. They're threatening to unalive themselves, and then you're like, okay, I need to pull out of this. Not safe to me anymore. Oh, hey, see. Sorry, I'm not. I have to read the messages. Props to you that you don't change yourself to please others. I think it's totally fine to be yourself. There's a social thing that's weird to enjoy doing things alone. Yeah, what's wrong with weird? I grew up with friends that weren't into the things I'm into or quickly grew out of them. I just learned to go out and enjoy things I like. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is that, again, enjoying things by yourself, being okay with being by yourself and stuff like that. Is that, like, again, there's just kind of this understanding. I'm like, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, generally, yeah. I only think I'm not okay because because you're saying it that way. And I think that's also why I enjoy like fan works and stuff like that. Sometimes it's the idea of being like part of a community, but also like not known inside community. Okay, come on. Stop getting caught on yourself. Okay. I don't know where the fuzz is getting caught on this thing because it should be coming through a lot smoother than it is. But it's amazing how many times you can have it and be like, you know, you're helping people because these are people who are crying out for help, and you're being like, you know, not like I'm going to save them, but also just like, you know, if you need someone to talk to, I can talk to. And then eventually it turns into, I need a lot more than that. And you're like, well, maybe boundaries? And then like, what are you talking about? Hey, thanks for showing up. I appreciate you being here while I ranted about my issues. I actually came on here to talk about movies. So, conversation has gone the normal route it tends to, which is me getting distracted. But I remember I was looking. Okay, let's see. I need to do this. I always have to make sure I have to like pull in like 2 stitches on the side on these things so the head doesn't end up crooked, but if I pull too far over, then the thing ends up crooked anyway. So, trying to figure out how to keep this thing straight. Yeah. He's a friend of mine. We actually were hanging out the other day. So, it's been cool. But I originally came on here with the idea to talk about, like, I watched a video about like the live action Disney movies, and I thought that what they were talking about was interesting, but somehow it turned into my emotional issues. But doesn't it always? Hey, when your camera's on and there's no script in front of you, it's so easy just to let your brain go wherever it goes. Anyway, I'm trying to make a Bonnie. So I'm saying, this is why I gotta talk about Genshin Impact and Star Rail all the time, because otherwise I'm just gonna talk about my own issues for too long. I have to talk about fandom stuff otherwise. Okay, where's the next stitch? We actually have a person in our D&D campaign named Stitch. Her full name is Silent Stitch because she's like a medical doctor. That's fine. I'm probably only going to hang around long enough to get this Bonnie's head on. This wasn't intended to be a very long stream anyway. But, I was talking about, like, essentially the idea is, like, you have different expectations socially that people don't always realize, but I'm like hyper aware of because I don't have an autopilot mode in my brain for interpreting that sort of stuff. So sometimes you're going and you're being like, okay, you know, I had my last D&D session and I'm just kind of like, I think I screwed that up immensely because I gave them a way too hard fight without realizing to, and everyone felt frustrated afterwards. But again, it was kind of hard to tell. Like, I could feel the frustration in the room, but I didn't know where it was coming from because we also had technical issues. It was late at night. Like, I couldn't quite tell where the feeling was coming from, but I knew the feeling was there. And that's kind of the rough thing sometimes, is that other people might look at that and be like, okay, this makes sense. Then, you know, you'll be going and being like, wait, what? I don't know why this yarn. Normally this yarn isn't such of a pain to try and pull through, but right now it just keeps snagging on everything. But that's also why I kind of stream more now often, is that sometimes I just want to talk. Sometimes I just need to work on crocheting stuff, and like, if I just sit down and do it, I'll get distracted, but sometimes if I go and put camera on, I'm like, well, this is essentially my performance art now, and I have to pay attention to what I'm doing. More aptly, I need to, you know, do stuff. This still looks a little crooked. I hope I didn't make this crooked again. That looks about right. It's also one of those things I'm like, some people are like, pin the head on before you do it. I'm like, honestly, I'm not going to do that. So I was thinking about like the next things we're gonna do. So I'm working on my Nuzlocke. That obviously is kind of a priority at the moment. I'll upload the next episode of that onto my YouTube soon-ish. Because for some reason it doesn't Streamlabs doesn't let you do multiple platforms, so I have to upload that automatic. It won't upload automatically like it does for all my YouTube things. So I have to go do them manually, but that also means I have to go make a thumbnail. And I have to I still have my reaction video I did from way back when that I need to go and edit and chunk up. I don't imagine there'll be a lot of editing. It's just I know there's dead spaces in some areas, and it's just like 7 hours content to get through. I remember I was watching Nate Wants to Battle, doing his streaming thing, and he's just like, you know, how like making content and streaming and stuff like that is literally just doing everything yourself and hoping you don't burn out before you get to the point where you can hire an editor. I'm like, I've always been someone who enjoys the editing aspect of things, because at least the editing in the proper way that's done, where like someone gives you a list of things they want done and you go and make them happen, you know, that's easy enough, as opposed to when they're like, here's the video footage, turn it into a webinar, and I'm just like, okay. And then they're going and asking you about like quality and stuff like that, like, hey, you did this better last time. I'm like, well, did you want more? I remember I was thinking about that today, where I was like, how many times, like, my dad's talking about his work and, you know, he's complaining about employees and, like, you know, he has, like, somebody who's, like, you know, has this bad employee who's, like, not doing anything, but he keeps, like, you know, complimenting them like they're doing a good job, and then, like, we'll tear them apart in a meeting. I'm like, that was my last job, for sure. I was doing webinars. I thought I was doing a good job. We had some rough patches because there was some, like, political stuff that happened at the time, but, you know, it's horrible that, like I said, I have a complicated opinion about the Black Lives Movement thing, because, like, on one hand, I totally get its meaning and its reasoning and everything that happened with it. I almost skipped a stitch there, I think. But, like, on the other hand, I also got to see the other half of it, which was making everything else harder to do. Like, I don't think this is making change so much as it is stopping traffic, because now we have to deal with the fact that, like, every street like window has been smashed out by rioters. Like, you know, it's like, one hand, good cause. The other hand, everyone was stuck inside from COVID and really just looking for a reason to smash windows. So it's like a, you know, complicated math thing. But at the time, we had a webinar we were working on that was like, you know, this is a good topic because it's COVID, and it was essentially like the last webinar I worked on for that particular nonprofit, which, mind you, was all about, like, you know, informing people about the opioid epidemic and, you know, informing people so that, you know, we don't have more people with addictions and stuff like that. Good cause, great people, loved working with them, but just could get oddly political about some things and be like, okay, so the whole thing we're trying to do here is, like, you know, about this cause, about, like, unity, and this one guy who, like, was a person, you know, a person who suffered from an addiction, and then he, you know, got clean and was on the road to he has been on the road to recovery. He became, like, a pastor and has been, like, running his own, like, program in his county ever since, and he's one of the big, like, supporters of our, like, you know, program and stuff like that. But he brought up, like, certain things about the Black Lives Movement thing, and I was like, okay, cool, you know, like, I got my script. They told me exactly what I was supposed to cut and not cut, so I was like, okay, cool. And then, like, after the fact, after I think the webinar is done, and I've, you know, mind you, it takes me a while to edit these things. It takes even longer to export them, because we're talking about, like, 45-minute long videos, you know, in Premiere. It takes a while to export them. So I would export them, finish them, be like, okay, can I put this on the YouTube channel now? I'm finished making the thumbnail and the tags and all the other stuff I have to do in order to do this, because you said you wanted this out on Friday. It's now Monday. Can I get this thing done? And then they'll come back to me and be like, actually, there's this issue here. Can you go cut this thing out? I'm like, okay, fine. And I go cut it out. And I come back and be like, okay, this image actually isn't good. Can you go back and get that image? I'm like, fine. We go cut it out. Then it goes to, like, the boss finally goes and looks at it, because apparently they haven't looked at it yet, and they're like, actually, we can't say any of this stuff, cut out all of this. And you're just like, alright, why didn't you tell me that when I first started cutting through the footage? Now that's like, that's stuff I worked on with animations and graphics and text and everything. Like 15 minutes of it I have to cut out now, and never mind, by doing that, now a lot of the conversation doesn't make sense, because, I don't know, maybe when you interviewed the guy, you should have told him not to talk about those sort of things that you didn't want them in your video, because now trying to cut around him saying things, I'm not a miracle worker. I barely know how to audio edit. I know the basics of video editing and stuff like that. Like, this makes my job so much harder. And anything that could be vaguely had to do with Black Lives Movement, I had to get out. I couldn't even have people, like, stand together in, like, a, like, you know, like, a unity community way, because that could look too much like a riot or a march, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. I don't think anyone's going to care that much. No one watches our videos. I think we're going to be fine on this one, but, you know, they were just like, well, but we could lose our funding if someone sees this. I'm like, so I had to go through. It took us an extra month to get that webinar out because of how many cuts and changes and stuff like that, which wouldn't have been so bad if everyone had, one, they had, like, made the interview that way to begin with, and if two, if people had read the script at the same time and not chosen to read it at different times and therefore make edits at different times. So I was just getting, like, 4 different scripts of what was right to edit, and it was a pain in the butt. Because I thought we had a good message, but they're like, no, we can't mention anything about that. And I'm like, then why did you give that to me to edit, you know? It's tough because I view both sides openly and I see flaws, but these days you gotta choose a side. I am by my tone though, sometimes it slips. That's the thing I also hate about it, is like, why do we have to have sides? Because my opinion of sides in any conflict is, one, I'm wishy-washy, but more importantly, sides, when you determine that there are teams, when you determine there are 2 different teams, that means that you are immediately discounting the other side. That once you choose a team, the other side now becomes your enemy, as opposed to a bunch of people trying to figure out how complicated things work and complicated feelings, and coming together to make change. When it turns into sides, when it turns into teams, unfortunately, because of social media largely, and the media being an entertainment circus, it's no longer about making change. It's about, this is my side, and I'm going to slander the other side as much as possible, and then they're going to do the same back to us, and we're going to make so many people angry that we're going to sell 30,000 copies of this magazine. And I'm just like, things could probably be openly discussed and done better if we weren't so reactive as a culture, but unfortunately that's kind of what social media has done. And the news. I studied media a lot in college, and all of it's just kind of like, wow. News media is an entertainment circus. The bigger they are, probably the bigger the problems they have. But that's why I'm like, that's why it's like, on one hand, I remember that's something that literally, like, was practically like splitting up a friendship. It should be fair, that friendship was already on the way out. Like I said, I've had a lot of friendships that have just tanked, and clearly they were never friendships in the first place if they ended that poorly. But I had a friendship that was literally me discussing with a friend about the whole, like, riots and movement that happened. And I was like, you know, he was like, oh, well, the reason I didn't like discussing it with him was that he's like, well, did you see the clips? That's horrible. I can't believe they did something like that. I'm like, oh, yes, that is horrible. I'll agree with you on that front. And they should have never done something like that, and that was bad. However, on the other side of the fence, which no one wants to acknowledge, I don't think this is a good time to be doing all these riots. Well, more importantly, like, people who are marching, people who are trying to make a stand, sure, fine, but we were also in the middle of a pandemic that was killing a lot of people. So I think a lot of people just wanted to get out and about because they were tired of being at home, and this was their righteous cause, quotations or not, to get behind and be like, let's get out. We can go out and be free, and we have all this frustration and anger and other stuff from being locked inside because of the COVID isolation. Let's get out there and let some of it loose. And, you know, that's the thing that's hard about any sort of things when you have a big group like this, especially with social media, is that, like, a lot of people, the people who are in there for the right reasons are in there, and they do want to cause change, but unfortunately the people that the news is going to show you are the idiots that are making it look bad. So, you know, in the case of where we were, I was working not far away from Raleigh. That's the capital of North Carolina. And so what did I see from my perspective? People late at night defacing all the national monuments and smashing the windows of any businesses that were near the Capitol. And you're just like, this is hard to parse as a feelings as a human, because on one hand I stand with like the reasonings behind this. And I think the people on the right, but on the other hand, I see people flying those banners, destroying a place I like to walk, you know, whenever I want to, like, just let my thoughts drift. People were, like, destroying, you know, people's businesses and museums that just happened to be near the Capitol, because the Capitol was near some monuments, because we happen to be a city in the South. What do you do with those feelings? Where do you put them? You know, that was the complicated thing for me at that time. And I just remember I used to talk to a friend when he's not a friend anymore, but I used to talk to him, and he just had a very black and white viewing of it, where he's like, this is horrible and bad, and we should never allow this. I'm like, yes, I agree with you on that, but I also do not agree with the response. I don't think there's ever a right reason to retaliate with violence to people especially who did not ask for it, who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm like, I think there are better ways to, you know, act. And yeah, sometimes violence boils over, and that's the way it goes. And sometimes that's, you know, you do what you can in the moment. But I'm like, I unfortunately was in an area where, like, I saw too much of the destruction of property side of that particular movement. And not to mention, like, you know, I had a cousin who was in the police force who feared for his life during that time, because he already did, because he lives in the upper north, which, you know, depressed like places in, like, you know, places that are like have little to do, not a lot of economy, are like usually kind of in the more destroyed area. Those places can be pretty dangerous on a good day. Like, hearing about the sorts of calls he would get called on to, like, try and protect people. And yet, in the process of trying to, like, protect people, would usually be in a lot of danger from the person trying to hurt said person. Like, the amount of domestic violence, like, disputes he had to get called into, it was shocking. So the fact of, like, that there became, like, this outcry to be like, okay, now we just need to, you know, this was a horrible thing in every, you know, like, that one location had a horrible issue. People died because of it. But then the immediate backlash of, like, okay, this is a horrible issue, we need to fix it. That's correct in my mind. But then the immediate backlash of, like, okay, well, now every place is corrupt and every place is bad, is also just, that's too strong of a response. Because I remember reading something where it's like, you know, like, what was I watching? I think I was watching, like, a video on Loki. But it was the whole idea of, like, you know, annihilation is easy, violence is easy, reacting in emotions without thought is easy, trying to fix a broken system is hard, trying to heal something that's been hurt is hard, trying to choose to do the right thing when everyone says it isn't is hard. And so, you know, especially with people who had no horse in that race, that's the biggest problem that was what I felt with that thing at the time, was the people who had no horse in the race and just decided to get all, you know, up in it because they were bored and needed something to do. Those are the people that did the most damage. Gosh, this is turning into such a depressing stream right now. I need to stop getting on these topics. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because again, that's the problem I run into, is that, again, I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't necessarily always want to blame things, if you want to say that, on me being autistic and stuff like that, but I will admit, I do think there are definitely some things that I view differently, because I look at people differently, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can say maybe it's naivete or whatever it is, but sometimes I look at things in, like, a literal, almost robot-like stance, and I just look at things, I'm just confused sometimes and be like, this seems just so bad. Why would anyone want to do it? Or like, you can't communicate with this person. Why wouldn't you want to fix it? You know, like the fact that like people will do things with like not any consideration for hurting. That's why I'm like, I know the world is not that easy. 1, 2, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let me do this again because I think I lost count of my stitches. Let me try this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. 1, 2. Softer stuff just comes right off the hook. 2, 3, 4. Oh, my music stopped. 5, 6. Okay. Want to make sure I wasn't. When you're starting the first foundation chain, really gotta make sure you don't miss those stitches. It's very easy to do when I have a big fluffy yarn like this. Because this one I'm using right now, I think, is Baby Snuggle. It's a much softer yarn than the toucan stuff, but it also means it's much easier to like miss the stitches on it. Alright, let me just put my music back on for a minute here. Anyway, but I'll go and look at things and I'll just be confused. And the thing is that you're not allowed to not know, because now even not knowing something can be a damaging thing. Now, instead of ignorance being a thing that's like, oh, well, then we need to teach that person so they know better. It's like, no, this is your fault for not knowing. And it's why I will often not take a stance in things, because I'm like, I don't know, because I'm someone who has trouble telling when people are, feeling anything. I don't understand, like, why there's certain standards, like, in place. Why people do destructive things, why people do hurtful things. And I could sit there all day and wonder why. Because I feel like I just don't understand people sometimes. But if you go into a conversation that way, you're just opening yourself up to, danger. You go in with being genuinely curious. Half the time, that just gets people on your case. So it's like, that's why I don't generally take like a stance on most things, because every time I'll do that, like talking to like friends, or even that's also why I don't have social media really of any kind, because half the time I don't see any good reason for it. I'm online to be on fandoms or to learn. I don't care to be online for any other reason, because every other reason to be online, I think, is destructive. You go online to enjoy things as a community. You go online to find like-minded people. And you go online to potentially learn new abilities or skills. But like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I do not appreciate going online to be just like, I'm going to beat this other person down. That doesn't seem right. Which a lot of the internet is kind of for that reason. That's why, like, even when I'm like, and I remember I'll bring up like, I'll talk to like my sister and stuff like that. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Increase. First foundation chain is always so much. Getting it all together at the end is always such a pain. Anyway, is that like, you go in with genuine like curiosity and you try to learn. I've stepped in so many times going with a genuine question showing, because again, I'm also someone who has a difficulty showing emotion visibly to people or showing my frustration about people. And you come in, you'll talk to someone and be like, yeah, I definitely had a situation where people just think you're the most ignorant person ever. I had someone once, like, again, online thing, so maybe it was a little different, but I've had someone once go and be like, well, you couldn't know because you come from a higher income family. I'm like, so this discussion we're having now, I don't get a say in because I happen to tell you that my dad has a CIO's job? That discounts my opinion? And it was like, I wasn't even angry, I was just more like, why? Then of course you do that, and then the other person will get indignant and be like, you know why? I'm like, no, I genuinely don't. Can you explain it to me? That's the other reason I'm glad to have an autism diagnosis, because now I can literally go into... I want to go and use it sometimes and be like, you know, and people are like, what, are you stupid on? No, I actually have a mental disorder that means that I have trouble picking up on what people are doing. Or why. And I am more literal than people a lot of the times, and I don't understand things, and have a little patience with me, because sometimes I want to make people feel guilty for making me feel like, you know, a stupid alien in the room. Because I think that's fair. I think that people need to be a little more aware of other people's feelings sometimes. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 1. I'll count for a second. 2, 3, 4, 5. So, because the reason that this whole like topic came up initially, by the way, I'm not just ranting into the void, or maybe I am, but the biggest reason I was bringing that was that I watched a video about race swapping in movies. Because I recently was talking, like you saw Raver in here earlier, I was talking to him about this the other day. And it was about how, like, you know, race swapping is a good, is a bad, you know, and I think it's definitely, like anything in life, is a, it depends. Most things, there are very few things in this world, in this life, that we can universally say no or yes to. Every other thing, especially these day and age, is always a, it depends. That's why I don't really care for blanket statements, even if they make the world easier to understand. My sister just asked me what I want for dinner, and I'm like, what do I want for dinner? Sometimes I'm definitely one of those people that, like, you have to give like 3 options to, or like what they would like for food, and then you can be like, yes, that thing. But I'll go and like try and figure out, like, I remember, like, for instance, the one thing I think of is, like, you know, when fandoms argue amongst themselves, which tends to happen as a fandom gets bigger. I've actually would love to just study different fandoms as like a psychological study, because gosh, they are a very interesting way to study human nature. 2, 3. Like, I remember, like, I've been in the Fire Emblem fandom for a long time, and like, thank you. Thanks for showing up, Ixie. 6. And that's one of those things that, like, for like, fandoms when they're small, when no one really doesn't know about them, when they're kind of just, crawling to keep by, are usually a lot more civil. Because it usually is, then you just have essentially like the more devoted fans that are going to be like, we are here to love this thing together. And, make cool fan stuff. And usually have a couple of strange ones, but like the bigger fandom gets, usually the weirder it gets and the more divided it gets. This definitely happened to, that definitely happened to Fire Emblem. As it got to be a bigger thing, then you had the old fans versus the new fans, which is a war that never even needed to happen. And then, like, you had the people who were like really in fan of one game, but they didn't like the other games, and like, well, the other games exist, so you kind of acknowledge them, and then it was an us. Again, once you get into an us versus them mentality, you kind of shut down any means of meaningful conversation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20. Okay. It's funny that way. But like, I'll go look at, like, I like looking at like fandoms as kind of like a psychological study of like, it's funny how people can like, all love the same thing so much that they argue about it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. After all, I think any good work, like any literary work, if it's truly good, should stand up to critique. And that's not saying that it is without flaws. That means that if you truly love something, that's the video, like when I'm watching video retrospectives, those are the ones I love the most. If you truly love a thing, you should be able to take the good with the bad. You yourself can come to the determination of whether the good outweighed the bad. But you should be able to say, I love this thing, but I acknowledge it has issues. Like, if I were ever to do a video essay on Persona 5, I love Persona 5 so much. I have so much stuff from it. It is a life-changing game experience thing I did with my sister. Like, I have so much love for Persona 5, but I acknowledge it has some serious issues in areas. But it is as bad close as you can get to a perfect game in my eyes. Like, it has some areas of issue. Everything does. No thing is without fault, and anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something. But it is fascinating. So that's why I like watching lately. I've been watching a lot of like video retrospectives, because I like seeing people who like truly retrospectives go and watch the whole thing and then go back and with a new set of eyes go in and analyze it. I've been thinking about doing like a Criminal Minds retrospective myself, because I really like the show Criminal Minds. And I also noticed there's like none on YouTube. Like, there's no one that does like a series overview of Criminal Minds. There's one or two who talk about like the beginning of the show. There's one or two that talk about like political junk that has to do with the show that I'm not really interested in. There's no one who goes on like a season by season basis and goes and talks about it. So like, maybe I'll do that at some point. But I also said maybe I'll do a lot of things. I still have to edit together, like I was saying, my Genshin Impact reaction video, which is like 7 hours long, and that's why I'm putting it off, because I'm going to need some serious like mental stimulation in order to try and get through something so big as that, and also because it's something that I know will take a while. So lately I'm just doing things that are much easier to do, like crocheting, and I'm just like, oh man, that'll take forever. But I also really want to do it at some point, like, like I was talking a bit with Raver earlier. Sometimes, I think I need to do some things more for me, instead of just always doing things in services of others, which, as much as I love to do that, I'm like, sometimes I think I need to, go and be like, this is a me thing. So that's what I'm going to do. I will be, I mean, it's on the, like, I want to do it so I can put it on YouTube and people can watch it more easily than they can, like, on Twitch or on, YouTube you can watch the full stream, but I would like to put it all in one place so it'd be easier for people to access. I think I'm going to do his bow tie, and then I think I'll stop for now, because the light's getting a little dimmer now, and yeah, I think I'm going to take a, I'm going to do the bow tie and that'll be done for right now, because I think we've, let's see, yeah, we've been going about 2 hours. I think that's a fair enough thing to do, but Like, I want to go and, like, edit that. And like I said, I want to do some sort of analysis on, you know, Genshin Impact as a whole, comparing it to Star Rail, which is a game I think is far superior, but I think it's fascinating how these two games come from the same developer, yet can be very different in their, like, approach. Like, I think one definitely does it significantly better than the other. Putting in the first rings in a magic ring is always the pain in the butt because the yarn shifts so much. Okay. But like, and I want to do, I've said before, I want to do a Fire Emblem retrospective. I'm also wondering if I should just do it as a podcast or something, because I've been doing lately like a gaming journal, where I've like I'll play something and then make a recording of my thoughts in the moment to go and look back on. I'm almost wondering if I should just like go and, you know, post that as a podcast or something. Although again, I speak in my notes much the way I speak on stream. I'm easily distracted and tend to slip in between streams of thought very fast. So I don't know if it'd be discernible, but I'm also like I said, I'm doing a kind of, I'm recording footage from a Genshin Impact playthrough right now that I'm doing to try and catch myself up and get myself back into the game. To continue on my main file. Which I'm like, I could potentially upload as like a no commentary run, if anyone would be interested in seeing that. It's a game that, again, I think says something in the fact that, like, despite my mixed feelings on it, I keep coming back to try and play Genshin Impact, so clearly it has some sort of meaning to me. It's a puzzle I can't quite figure out yet. And so I keep, like, fixated on it, and I want to do something with that. But, you know, that's kind of things I'm thinking about lately. It's like, you know, it could be cool to do a Criminal Minds retrospective, because no one else has done that yet. It could be cool to do a, you know, I want to do a retrospective on Fire Emblem. Like, largely just because, like, I don't see anyone doing a very interesting analysis on Fire Emblem Engage, which I thought was a great game, and yet for some reason seemed not very well received. At least not in comparison to Fire Emblem Three Houses, which, you know, is still a great game, but I also think was not as good as people like to laud it now. And I also like to kind of like deal with the whole like recency bias of like, of course, the one that, you know, seems right now seems more flawed. But remember when we originally had the first game and everyone was calling that one crap? You know, like, it's one of those funny things. So there's a lot of things I want to do and sit down and discuss and talk about, but also it's one of those things where you're like, it would just, sometimes just the idea of outlining something, the idea of the editing, of the writing that would go into it, I tire myself out just thinking about it. That's why I'm kind of like, I'm not sure exactly how I would manage that particular thing. But I think about it a lot. That's why I stream largely, so sometimes I just need to talk. And then also people can see like some of the stuff I'm working on, like crocheting, or like I'm really enjoying my Pokemon Nuzlocke I'm doing right now, even though I'm definitely suffering a lot in that game right now. And things like that I just like to go and, you know, mess around with. And be like, let me just kind of, you know, this essentially in a way, this is just me getting used to talking to a camera. And it also is always easier to talk to a camera when you know there's not a huge audience watching. Because then you're kind of like, well, whatever conversation here is me and the two lurkers in the chat. Or, you know, I don't know how many lurkers there are, I can't see. But, like, you know, if there's like 2 people in the chat, then, like, it's just you and me, we're hanging out, we're doing stuff. As opposed to, like, you have to think and script it if you know it might be viewed by a lot of people. And again, I kind of am just possessed by this need to, like, make something, like, meaningful. That is, like, not just I'm doing this because I want to be popular, but just because I'm, like, something that I can look back on when it's finished. And even if that's the only video I ever make, I can look back on and be like, hey, I did that, and I'm proud of it. It's kind of why I'm chasing a lot of cases when I'm making stuff, is I'm like, I haven't hit that point yet Still working for it. Still looking somewhere. But, like, I want to get to that point where I can go and be like, I'm proud of that thing I did. I did a good thing there. Maybe I'll never do it again, but I'd like to go and be proud of that. I've had a few stories I've done that have been like that. Unfortunately, a lot of them are Pokemon-based stories, so I'm like, I can't post them anywhere, but I have more than a few stories that I want to, like, do at some point. I was thinking about how I need to go back and finish that Detroit Become Human one I started way back when. I've just not finished. That's also kind of what this is. Like, it's in some ways making content, but sometimes it's also just a fidget for me. When I come on stream to crochet, I let my brain go, and I just, like, think about everything and nothing at all. It's kind of therapeutic in a way. Okay, let's get this bow tie on, and then that'll be it for me for now. I could work on the ears, but it's also getting kind of dark in here, so I would need to get up to turn on the lights anyway. And, you know, I've already gone through this video once. That probably is big enough hint, if anything, that it's, you know, it's time to take a break. But I will coming back soonish. Definitely will be back next week to stream the Nuzlocke some more. Been really enjoying that as I'm able to. Not many people have been able to come and see that, but that's actually okay. Because I've been enjoying it. And it's nice to just do something for yourself. So, I've been enjoying that a lot. Even as much as it doesn't look like it, I'm sure, with how much I keep dying. I have, in fact, actually been enjoying it a lot. It's fun. Well, to be fair, I play Fire Emblem on classic mode. Clearly, I like suffering. But, okay, let's get this tucked away. I even left my hair down today because everyone keeps telling me it looks better when it's down. And I'm like, well, okay, I will, but it does get in my way a lot when I'm trying to craft. Need an efficient way of storing it away. That's not just a ponytail. Okay, there we go. Alright, so he's almost there. He's got his bow tie at least. I got his nose. That'll be right there later. And then I just need to make his ears and he'll be ready to go. I'll be selling him at my next con. But anyway, so that's where I'm going to stop for now. I think this is I kind of got to the end of my, like, talking point anyway. Or at least I kept dancing so much around my talking point that I kind of forgot what I was going for originally. So, yeah, sorry, I came on here and I said I was going to talk about movies and I did not at all. But that is why I never put talking points in my descriptions and titles, because I honestly don't know where it's going to go. It's just kind of, hey, I put ADHD and autistic in tags. I think that's enough to go and point out that I don't really know what I'm talking about, and I don't know where this is going to go any better than anyone else does, but this was fun. Had a good time. Got some stuff done, had some discussions, had a little therapy maybe. I was good to have some people in the chat. I always like having, you know, be able to have a back and forth. And, you know, obviously anyone who is here, who's lurking and just likes listening in the background, appreciate you guys too. I'm glad that you were able to be here and listen and exist with me. Now it's gotten a little darker, you can see my lights a little bit better. But anyway, so I'll be, maybe Saturday, Sunday, if not, probably Monday. Next stream. It probably won't be the Nuzlocke. I'm probably going to leave that for Tuesday, but it might be me messing around on Star Rail or Genshin again. It might be a new game. Might just be a crochet thing. I don't really know. But keep an eye on things. Make sure you're following the channel so you get notifications when I will next go live. And, or if you're on the YouTube end of it, then, I don't know, just subscribe so you know when the recordings go up. But anyway, thanks for hanging out with me, guys, and I'll see you all later.